Good morning. Bonjour. Josan. Welcome to the Community Family Service of Ontario. I am Jean Yip, the Member of Parliament for Scarborough Agincourt. The great riding that you are all here today. Oh, so nice to begin with some applause. Thank you. First, I would like to begin with the land acknowledgement. We are gathered today on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Thank you for joining us today, just one day after the Lunar New Year period officially ended. We celebrate the Year of the Rabbit since it is the luckiest animal in the zodiac. I feel that luck today with the minister coming. I would like to introduce our host, Anna Victoria Wong, the Executive Director at the Community Family Services of Ontario. She has been a major advocate for this Hong Kong Pathway program. CFSO has provided many newcomer services as well as mental health supports. I'd like you to come up and say your remarks. Thank you.
Hi all, it's very nice to see all of you at our communities and at this community hub here. And a warm welcome to all during this happy Lunar New Year of the Rabbit. Thank you, Mr. Minister, for coming to deliver this important announcement, and MP Jean Yip for attending this event, and for championing our cause for the most part. It is our honor to be able to witness such confirmation from our federal officials in person today at the premises of CFSO. Many among our staff have lived experience related to this cause, and they, in turn, have served thousands of Hong Kongers before they arrive and after they arrive, some of whom are here with us today. Thank you for coming. I thank all of you who are attending virtually and physically, all who share our concerns for the cause, all who have responded to our research surveys and provided feedback, all public officials who have spent time understanding our concerns, our staff and volunteers who have helped with all our work along the way, our dedicated advocacy partner, Hong Kong Watch, our grassroots providers such as Project Emmanuel, Hong Kong Collaborative Academic Network, and Toronto Hong Kong Parents Group that share our workload in providing unfunded settlement services for Hong Kong Pathway users. As a social service provider, we understand intimately the needs of incoming and growing populations. As a publicly funded agency, we are mindful of the challenges in our local economic and employment markets. We strive to capitalize on the efficient user resources to align needs from both sides to create a win-win situation for newcomers and Canada. This Hong Kong Pathway policy serves just that. It imports talents that are ready, willing, and able, and contribute to the Canadian economy and are supportive of our core values within our charter. The announcement today may represent an important milestone since the launch of the Hong Kong Pathway. CFSO and its partners will continue to advocate for this on this front to ensure that permanent residency process is smooth and solid for Hong Kong Pathway users, and that they get the much-needed settlement support that will empower them to rebuild their lives socially and emotionally for sustainable economic contribution in Canada. 我哋香港人好有決心、意願同埋能力去貢獻加拿大嘅社會。我哋亦都期盼聯邦移民部會繼續聆聽我哋用家嘅意見。Comme les Hongkongais parmi nous aujourd'hui, nous sommes travailleurs et déterminés et nous adoptons les valeurs fondamentales du Canada. Nous prenons l'engagement de renforcer les valeurs communes et nous sommes prêts à contribuer à cette société libre et démocratique. Merci.
Hello and welcome everyone. I'll begin this announcement like I do all others by adjusting the microphone to suit my height. Look, first let me say thank you to our gracious host here at CFSO. Anna, thank you so much for the work that you do every day and for agreeing to host us for what I believe is an important announcement to demonstrate Canada's continued relationship and support for Hong Kong and those seeking to come from Hong Kong to Canada. I'd also like to say thank you, Jean, for your MC services today. It's a wonderful opportunity to be here with you in Scarborough Agincourt. And Han, thank you for making it to the announcement as well. It's wonderful to be here with you. Before I get into the specifics of this announcement, let me just say how important it is that Canada continues to embrace immigration as a growth strategy for the future. Selon moi, l'immigration est essentielle pour la prospérité du Canada. Et le Canada a besoin beaucoup de gens pour assurer le succès économique dans l'avenir. Canada needs more people for economic reasons. We need people for demographic reasons. And we need to continue to support some of the world's most vulnerable in response to humanitarian situations around the world. Look at the need from an economic point of view. Canada has had one of the strongest economic recoveries of any G7 nation. We've seen GDP well in excess of pre-pandemic levels. 117% of the jobs that were lost during the pandemic have now returned. The rate of unemployment this summer hit an all-time low and is about at that level today. And despite these successes, we had 1 million jobs open in the economy this summer. Today, more than 800,000. The reality is we cannot fill the needs of the economy with a domestic labor force, even if we put immense resources into training and do more to bring people into the economy who've historically been marginalized. We need to continue to recruit workers internationally if we're going to maximize our economic success and allow many businesses who've struggled over the course of the pandemic to continue to remain open by giving them access to the labor that they need so they can sustain not only the bottom line of those businesses, but protect the jobs of the people who work for those businesses today. From a demographic point of view, we need to continue to bring people, and young people, to Canada. 50 years ago, there were 7 workers for every retired person in this country. Today, there's 3, close to 3. In my part of Canada, the number's closer to 2. If we don't change the trajectory we're on by welcoming young people from around the world to Canada, the conversation we're going to be having 50 years from now won't be about labor shortages. It'll be about whether we can afford to keep schools and hospitals open. We need to continue to embrace immigration, as we have over the course of Canada's history, to ensure that we can continue to provide the basic public services that I think we too often take for granted. And of course, when we see injustices around the world or migration crises, Canada will continue to play a leadership role. I'd point out that over the course of the pandemic, Canada was responsible in back-to-back years for the resettlement of more than 1/3 of the total number that were resettled anywhere globally. There was 3 years in a row where Canada became the top destination for refugees that have been resettled with permanent status. This is something that I'm proud of as a Canadian, but it's something that I also believe legitimately serves Canada's self-interest in the long term. By welcoming people who want to give back after they've been given a second lease on life, we can do the right thing for the vulnerable, but also serve our national interest at the same time. Now let me turn my attention to today's announcement. It's no secret that the relationship between Canada and Hong Kong runs deep. There's a history of more than 150 years of Hong Kongers living in Canada and making Canada a better place to call home. And Canada continues to stand with the people of Hong Kong, and we're committed to supporting the freedom and democracy that's cherished by so many. In particular, I had an experience walking in where there were some individuals who wanted to voice their concerns. You may have seen folks outside protesting on a very particular immigration policy that we want to work on to help maintain integrity in the process, but also respect the needs of people who are seeking to come and make a difference in Canada. Let's not forget how special a country Canada is, where a minister on their way into an announcement can stop and have a peaceful conversation with people who want to raise objections to certain policy choices. People in Hong Kong know all too well that that may not be an opportunity for them. We have to jealously guard the freedoms that we hold here in Canada and do our best to spread those freedoms to other parts of the world. You may be aware, of course, a few years ago, Canada announced new pathways for open work permits and for permanent residency for people seeking to come to Hong Kong. On the permanent residency side, programs remain open until 2026, allowing those who've got work experience in Canada or who've studied in Canada to qualify for permanent residency. But we also developed a program that created new open work permits that were valid for up to 3 years for people who had a Canadian post-secondary degree or an equivalent foreign credential or a diploma for a program of at least 2 years. That program was due to expire very soon, within about a day. In fact, I'm very pleased to share we're going to be making 2 important changes to this program. And I'm pleased to announce on behalf of the Government of Canada this morning that we are going to be extending the application deadline by 2 years. So people applying to the program will have an additional 2 years to apply until February 7th, 2025. In addition, we're also changing the eligibility for the program for Hong Kong residents who previously needed to have completed their studies within the last 5 years, and we're expanding it to allow anyone who has completed their studies within the past 10 years to be eligible. This program change comes directly from feedback we heard from the community. We wanted to see more people become eligible for the program and give them more time to apply. We believe it's the right thing to do for people who seek entry into Canada on an open work permit, but to my earlier point, we also believe it serves Canada's self-interest. This means that Hong Kong residents will have the opportunity to come to Canada and gain valuable work experience and perhaps even make their home permanently here in Canada over time through some of those already existing permanent residency pathways I've discussed. Extending the open work permit public policy also means that spouses, common law partners, and dependent children of Hong Kong residents can also apply for a study or work permit in Canada, resulting in even more workers for employers to hire and more people coming to our communities. You know, last year, newcomers accounted for almost 35% of Canadian business owners that had employees. That's an enormous part of Canada's economy. To make sure that business owners in Canada can hire the workers that they need to sustain our economy, we need to continue to bring in more newcomers. Just to give an example, there's a newcomer to Canada named Alan Lau, who came from Hong Kong to live and work in Toronto. Alan started his company, you may be familiar with it, Wattpad, to bring together communities of writers and encourage literacy amongst youth. This company has grown from just two co-founders, Alan and his colleague Ivan Ewan, to a company now of 170 employees. Wattpad is used by 70 million people worldwide, including published authors like Isabel Ronan, who said that it would have been impossible for her to gain her audience without the platform that Wattpad gave her. Now, Canada needs to continue to do more on immigration to fill almost 825,000 vacant jobs across the country, and expanding the open work permit program, from my perspective, is a win-win, as it gives Hong Kong residents more opportunity to gain work experience here in Canada, but it also allows us to support the Canadian economy by bringing workers at a time when they're needed most. This allows us to show our support for them, and it also gives Canadian employers and more skilled workers to hire at a time when we need them. I want to say thank you to everyone who took the time out today. Thank you to everyone who helped inform these important policy changes. I look forward to seeing the progress that it's going to mean for people on the ground. And with that, I'd like to invite my friend and colleague, Han Dong, who's going to offer some remarks today as well. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, it's way too high even for me. Well, thank you very much, Anna, for hosting us. And Jean, it's a wonderful, one of the best writings in the country, Scarborough Agincourt. Thanks for having us. And this is very exciting, and I want to thank Minister Fraser for this wonderful news. This is a historic moment for people of Hong Kong and for our country. This initiative will have far-reaching impacts in our communities and for our economy, as we welcome more skilled individuals to Canada and provide them with the tools and support they need to succeed. For people of Hong Kong who will benefit from this initiative, it means opportunity to pursue their career goals and gain valuable work experience in Canada. For the Canadian communities, it means having access to a pool of talented and skilled individuals who can contribute to our economy and help drive growth and innovation. It means building a stronger, more diverse communities that are better equipped to meet the challenges of future. And let me tell you, the timing, it couldn't be better. As we all know, Canada is facing a significant shortage of skilled workers, like Minister Fraser mentioned. By extending and expanding the open work permit and establishing pathways to permanent residency, we're not only providing people of Hong Kong with new opportunities, but also addressing a crucial need in our economy. These skilled workers will bring fresh perspectives and new ideas to the table, helping to drive our economy forward and creating more jobs for Canadians in the process. Canada has always been a country that welcomes those in need and support those who are looking to build a better life for themselves and their families. Today, we continue that proud tradition, and I'm confident that this initiative will bring great benefits to all of those involved. I want to say that this is a proud moment for Canada and our relationship with Hong Kong. I believe this is what made Canada such a great country, and I'm so proud to be part of this effort. I look forward to seeing more positive impacts this initiative will have on our communities and our country as a whole. Merci.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Andre Visser with IRCC Communications. We're going to start the question and answer period right now with the minister. Before we ask our questions, please identify yourself with your name and media organization before asking your question. Bonjour, mon nom c'est André Visser, je suis représentant d'IRCC. Nous allons commencer la période de questions-réponses avec le ministre. Avant de poser votre question, s'il vous plaît, vous identifier avec votre nom et ainsi que votre organisation médiatique. Do we have a question on the floor? Yes, we do.
Hi, Minister. This is Pertalam from Omni TV. So I just want to know, how about those people, those applications which is under the old scheme? Is it automatically will transfer to the new scheme? That means when they apply as a PR status in here for 5 years, and then now, from today's on, they can apply under 10 years.
Thanks very much for the question. The intent of the policy is to offer a continued process, so there will be a seamless transition from one to the other. People who were eligible that have already submitted an application should expect their eligibility to be considered as though there has been a continued ability. We're not making them apply again a second time. I expect that those who have applied up until today's announcement should still see their processing take place in a very timely way. We're averaging right now about 7 weeks, and those who already have an application in the system should expect to have a decision rendered in accordance roughly with that timeline.
And we have another question over here. Yes.
Thank you. I'm Joseph Lau from Toronto TV. So my question is that the immigration program for Ukraine and Hong Kong right now are believed to be the political immigrations. My question is that what percentage of political immigrations of the overall our immigration status? Thank you.
Sorry,
I believe the current immigration program for Hong Kong and also for Ukraine are believed to be the political immigration programs. So in the overall Canada political programs, what percentage of the political immigration sits on right now? Thank you.
So look, I'll apologize in advance because I can't give you a clear answer, not because I want to, but because a clear answer doesn't necessarily exist, and let me explain why. We don't have a category that we define as political immigration versus other kinds of immigration. But one of the other unique features of these programs is when you're dealing with temporary programs to Canada, we don't set a limit on the number of applications that we will have seen. Typically, we would have seen applications for work permits from Hong Kong before the new program was announced a few years ago, about 1,500 or so per year. Over the past few years since it came into effect, we've seen about 17,000. Now that we've expanded the eligibility criteria, it's possible that we see a further increase. With respect to the program for Ukraine, we've seen many hundreds of thousands of applications and more than 100,000 people who've arrived. I'm hearing that a lot of people are applying essentially to take out an insurance policy to determine whether they need a safe place to come if the war worsens in their own community. So whether you count a person after they've arrived versus when they applied would dramatically change the proportion. But what's important on our temporary programs is we don't set a limit on the number that we'll take for tourists, for temporary foreign workers, for international students. If you qualify, we believe it's a good thing for Canada to allow you in. We need to continue to have a finite number of permanent residents each year so we can actually manage the successful integration of people into Canada, but we don't pick and choose where a particular person will come from or for particular political reasons. We will sometimes respond to a humanitarian crisis as we did in Afghanistan, but on the economic side, it's a score-based system where people can compete for permanent residency, and on the provincial Omni program side, people can secure a nomination on the basis of the skills that are in demand in a particular province. So it's a difficult question to answer because it's nuanced, but when it comes to these particular programs, we actually don't set a limit or a target for the percentage of our programs that we would like to see, because we believe once we establish a program to allow people to come here temporarily, it should be open to anyone who's eligible.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you.
We've got another question right here on the floor. I'll go right over here.
Thank you. So I'm Crystal from Fairchild. Television. Good morning, Minister. So today the government announced the extension of the OWP program for those who have graduated within the past 10 years. So there's also 2 pathways to permanent residency, which you've mentioned. So it's Stream A and Stream B. The Stream B requires the OWP holders to have 1 year working experience within 5 years of their graduation. Does that mean that people who have graduated within the past 10 years, which of course is the newly extended people who can join, is not able to benefit from Stream B, or are we going to see a change in that part of the PR streams very soon?
Yeah, thank you very much, Crystal. I appreciate the question. So today's announcement is specific to the Open Work Permit program. We're examining right now the different PR pathways and whether those need to have changes made as well. But before we make a decision on whether we have to increase the 5-year to 10-year limit on the permanent residency pathway, we first want to understand the impact of changing the temporary program. The reason I say that is it may very well turn out that people who come here and benefit from 3 years of work experience may not actually need the benefit of the Hong Kong specific pathway to qualify for permanent residency. People who've become well-educated, who spend 3 years working in Canada, have a very good chance of qualifying for permanent residency either under the existing Hong Kong specific streams or the ordinary permanent residency pathways. We want to be careful not to broaden policies that we don't need to broaden in order to serve the interests of the people we're trying to serve, because that adds processing demands on our system, which we always try to limit so we can do more good for more people. So we're going to examine the impact of the decision that we've made today to determine whether it's going to successfully allow applicants to transition to permanent residency. And if we find we need to do more, we could potentially look at further changes to the permanent residency pathways, but we've not made that decision because we don't yet know that it's necessary to achieve the goal of creating a smooth pathway for qualified people from Hong Kong to seek permanent residency in Canada.
We have a question right over here.
Vicky from ONIP Cantonese, and protesters who are active in Hong Kong pro-democracy movement have faced different kind of criminal charge under political reasons, and requirement of police certificates have become a burden during their application. Will the government consider to remove such barrier? If not, how would the government assist those protesters to apply for the lifeboat scheme?
Thank you very much for this question, and it sort of sinks in for me. It's unique that I've had the experience of walking through a very respectful protest on my way into today's announcement. National security and criminality will always be a part of applications to Canada's immigration system, but it's very, very important that people understand that we only accept criminal charges for the purpose of our immigration system when the behavior that's the subject of a charge abroad would also constitute criminal behavior in Canada. If somebody is facing criminal charges because they participated in a peaceful protest, and that is the sum total of their supposed wrongdoing, that will not impact their eligibility for Canada's immigration programs. We defend values around free speech and ability to participate in democracy, not just with our words, but with the decisions that we take. With our response to the Ukrainian crisis launched by a war by Vladimir Putin into Ukraine, we decided that it was important not just to speak about the principles of territorial integrity and self-determination of peoples, but to do everything we can to help people on the ground promote it. When we see charges, I note in particular about a sensitive case that is going forward right now involving 47 protesters who are facing charges. If you've taken part in democratic activities by voicing concerns about a government policy you disagree with, that's the normal course of a day in a democracy. People need to be free to be able to speak their mind without fear of punishment or retribution. To the extent someone has participated in activity that is not considered criminal in Canada, but still face charges for their ability to speak out against policies they disagree with, that's not going to render a person ineligible under these pathways.
Thank you, Minister. We're going to take a call from the out-of-town government teleconference line. Nous allons prendre un appel sur la ligne téléconférence du gouvernement. Operator, do we have a call from the media? A question from the media,
Thank you. Thank you, merci. Please press star 1 at this time if you have a question. S'il vous plaît, appuyez sur étoile 1 maintenant pour poser une question. The first question is from Ricky Wall from Fairchild Radio. Please go ahead.
Hello, Minister. Are you worried about government's reaction? Have you discussed with your colleagues in Canada about before making the decision?
I apologize. We can't hear you. There's a communication issue. Can you repeat the question one more time, please?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Minister. So, are you worried about China and Hong Kong government's reaction on this decision by IRCC, and have you discussed with your colleagues in Global Affairs Canada before making this decision?
Of course. Thank you for the question. For those who may not have been able to hear it, it's are we worried about China, and have we discussed with our colleagues at Global Affairs Canada before making this decision? When a minister in our government stands up to make an announcement, it is an announcement on behalf of the Government of Canada, not a particular ministry. Global Affairs Canada has been very clear about our position with China, in particular the need to diversify our interests in the Indo-Pacific region with the recent introduction of the Indo-Pacific strategy. The reality is that Canada won't be bullied, Canada won't be bought. We will do what we believe is right and that serves the national interest of Canadians in all circumstances. That includes the extension of an important program that was launched a few years ago to create both a temporary and permanent pathway for Hong Kongers seeking to come to Canada after the imposition of the national security law. In governance, decisions are not always easy, and there are consequences, both positive and negative, to every decision you take in government. It's my view that the decision we're taking today will serve Canada's interests on the international stage, but will also improve the well-being of our economy and support people who want to strengthen ties between Hong Kong and Canada. Of course, we always consider the geopolitical fallout or consequences of any decision that the government takes. But to me, this was a simple decision to extend a program that has been in place for a few years, that has been working very well in serving the interest of Canadians.
Thank you, merci. Operator, do we have another question on the line?
Thank you. Yes. So next question is from Mazen Yosri from the Fulcrum newspaper at University of Ottawa. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, operator, and good morning, Minister Fraser. So my question is that recently the City News Toronto newspaper has reported that IRCC said they have no plans for any CEC-specific draws, and yet there are around 60,000 people, also from Hong Kong and many places around the world, who are currently in the express entry pool, who have Canadian education and work experience, but are still below the 490, 480 CRS scores in the current draws. What is your current plan with reducing the CRS scores and granting these people a fair chance towards securing permanent residence in Canada?
Look, thank you very much for the question. And when it comes to the Federal Express Entry System, I think one of the things that we need to remind ourselves of is the CRS scores. Having people who have high scores is a good thing for Canada. One of the unique challenges that we're facing right now is there's a temporary inflation of the scores that exist as a result of pauses that were put in place to deal with certain pandemic-related restrictions to immigration. As you can imagine, dealing with an immigration system when borders are closed can be a challenging thing. That required us to pivot our strategy to welcome more people who are already in Canada to become permanent residents, while we continued to take applications for a period from people who were in third countries. So there was significantly more applications in the system, essentially a couple of years' worth, than would normally be the case. That means there was also nearly double the number of scores that were very high compared to ordinary standards. As we continue to increase our overall immigration numbers through the annual immigration levels plan, we're going to be admitting more high-ranking applicants into Canada, and we do expect to see a downward trend in CRS scores that will balance out closer to historical averages over the course of this year. We're looking at different policies we can implement to extend the ability of people to stay in Canada. I know last year, for example, we gave an extension to many postgraduate work permit holders to allow them to stay and to continue to work. I spoke with the group outside this facility today to discuss options to pursue something similar, but we haven't quite figured out the exact path forward. But we do expect that over the course of time, we're going to see a gradual return to more normalized CRS scores that would give people a fair opportunity to compete for those spaces. The one other change I'll draw attention to is there's been a major change made to the express entry system this past year that we'll be ready to implement as soon as this spring. For the first time, we will be able to use the federal express entry system to not just select the highest ranking applicants, but to choose the highest ranking applicants by sector and by region. This will allow us to better tailor the express entry system to the needs of local economies, whether it's healthcare workers in Nova Scotia, skilled tradespeople in Ontario, whatever the case may be. We want to make sure that the immigration system works for communities who rely on newcomers to sustain the economy, and that change, I expect, will further help many people who are already here making a difference.
Thank you very much. We have a question on the floor.
Thank you. Good morning, Minister. Andrea Chen from St. Tao Media Group. I just wanted to clarify, you mentioned that you don't want to open up another possible or change the existing corresponding immigration application requirements into 10 years. We have already heard from the reports on the ground that the graduates in this 2016-2017 group are facing a lot of challenges in terms of applying for permanent residence. Presumably, these folks don't want to come and just work in Canada for 3 years. Their ultimate goal is to immigrate to Canada, and we want to attract these people. What type of metric do you really need in order to convince you need to correspondingly change the permanent resident requirements? Because right now, if these people after 3 years, they're just thrown into this big pool, and we know how long that wait is. How are you going to measure that? What is going to change your mind? Because that's not going to attract people to come. In fact, it renders this a temporary work permit program rather than a permanent residence program to help these people leave Hong Kong permanently, especially when their services after they come are unfunded, as Anna has pointed out. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Look, thanks very much. And just a point of clarity, you led your question saying that we don't want to make changes to the permanent residency. It's not that we don't want to, it's that we haven't yet made a decision to do that. So we're examining right now the possibilities of shifting the requirements within the program, but we want to determine whether people will have the opportunity to transition to permanent residency through the extension of the open work permit. Under the existing permanent residency standard, and we'll probably, excuse me, need to assess as people start to use the new expanded pathway to whether they're actually able to do that successfully. One of the things that is really important to me is that when we're dealing with permanent residency, we want to make sure that we're creating pathways for people who are going to have the biggest impact on the Canadian economy, and knowing that they plan to be here for 40 and 50 years. So I'm hesitant before measures are fully baked in terms of what comes next to suggest that we might do one thing or another when there's different options that are under consideration. But to start, I would suggest that we've seen, based on the data, that the introduction of the open work permit does actually create a groundswell of applications, a major increase in the number of applications that we see each year for people who come to Canada, many of whom do want to work and stay. Not all of them, but many of them do want to come and work and stay. Just to reiterate the point that I made when I went over some of the numbers, we used to see about 1,500 applications a year. After we created this pathway over about 2.5 years, we've seen 17,000 applications. We're now going to be expanding the eligibility for a much larger cohort of people, and I expect we're probably going to see an increase in applications again. So I would debate the point that a temporary program won't increase interest in coming to Canada, but the piece that I have not yet figured out is whether with the increased number of people who can apply for the open work permit, whether they will be able to qualify under existing permanent residency streams, or whether we need further changes to the existing pathways specific to Hong Kong that will create that opportunity for them. I don't think we necessarily need to wait the full 3 years to figure that out. I think we're starting to see trends of people who are transitioning that qualified for the previous program now, but I'd like to see a little bit more information come in about whether they can access pathways outside of the Hong Kong specific pathways to determine whether we also need to make changes to the Hong Kong specific pathways to allow them to qualify for permanent residency, if that makes sense.
Thank you very much. And that concludes our media event. Thank you very much. Cela conclut notre événement médiatique. Est-ce que je pourrais, if I could have everyone stand over here and our MPs, and we'll take a picture, if that's okay, right between the Canadian flags. Come on up.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
You can get your cameras out. Yeah, you can go right over here.
Can we take our mask off? Yeah. Okay, we can take our masks off.
Okay.
Okay.
Can we let everyone else take it, and I'll take it for
Yeah, sure.
Can I take that?
Yeah, I'm going to take this with me. I'm done with all that.
I'm going to put that somewhere safe.
Okay.
Yeah.
hold on there for me after.
Well,
Thank you. Merci. The conference has now ended. La conférence est maintenant terminée. Please disconnect your lines at this time. Veuillez s'il vous plaît décrocher votre ligne. Thank you for your participation. Merci à tous les participants qui se sont joints.
You want to get yours now? Excellent.
Where was your wedding?